All right. Hello and welcome to the Five Stones podcast. I am but one of three mere mortals hosting this program today. My name is Raymond Modulin, and I'm sitting actually in the basement of my island resort. And the other two gentlemen are.
I am Colin Edegard. Good morning.
I'm Joe Trester, and I am not sitting at the Island Resort. I am sitting at the fabulous Cigar Club of Indiana.
And what are you gentlemen enjoying? I'm back to the new world. And Joe, you are, the more I think about it, I guess you're right. I've been kind of monogamous to this new world for about 3 years now. I really enjoy the cigar.
I'm currently smoking a punch.
La Flor Dominican. This one's at the end of the road.
Colin, you've been pretty consistent with your cigars as well, I noticed. Joe's the only floozy among us that's.
I'm going to have to cut another one here before long.
Yeah. So welcome to today's show. And once again, I want to remind you guys, push the subscribe and the like button and the bell. And I'm going to make this offer early so people will actually maybe see it. If you are interested in being a guest or a contestant or an adversary on the show, we welcome all of you. Just put something in the comment that you'd like to come on the show and tell us how we're so right, or change our mind if you think you can do that. And our producer will reach out to you and schedule you to come on air with us, where we can actually have a debate of opinions, whether they're differing or similar, like adults do, and not resort to name calling and all of that. So that's the first challenge today. Joe, what do you got on the hook for us?
Well, I thought we would talk about an interesting topic that I was looking into just this morning, even, that families are being priced out of the housing market just by what's going on within the country.
What'd you read on Zillow? You read something earlier about that.
Yes. So Zillow has found that families with children are spending 66% of their income on their mortgage and childcare combined.
Wow. So 2/3 of their money are going out the door, one just to live, and the other is to actually watch their children while they go and earn the money they got to spend to pay for the kids.
So, I mean, like, realistically, to give like some real numbers from this article, typical childcare expenditures in the country are now up to $1,984 a month. The typical mortgage, based on a 6.6% interest, is now $1,973 a month. So they're spending more on childcare than they are on a mortgage.
So, real quick math. That's 24 grand a year in childcare that you have to pay. You would pay that out of take-home pay, and you only get, Colin, what, about 80% of your gross pay? So 24 divided by 0.8, you're looking at $31,000-ish. So in essence, if the second worker is not making more than 31 grand, they're actually working just to keep their kids so they can go to work. I remember when I first got out of college, my wife was working. I was married during college. She opted, when we were transferred to St. Louis, she opted to quit work and stay home with the two boys because of this exact reason at that time. You know, she was basically working for free because about everything she made, now this was the mid-90s, went to pay for the kids at daycare just so she could go to work.
Yeah, I've often thought about that. I grew up in a world where typically it was a one-income household. My dad worked, my mom stayed home. And if you're working just to be away, I'm sure there's a case to be made that it's a better situation for kids to have a parent at home rather than be sent off somewhere.
And the other part of that is, Colin, you've got young children. Joe, yours is about out of high school. Now the school hours make it almost impossible for that parent to drop them off and pick them up. I mean, kids get home at 2:00, 2:30. Parents usually don't get off work till 5. So you've got, even if they're in school and you're not paying daycare, you've got to find a way for them to get from school to some place. And that place kind of has to babysit the child.
Or you got to pay for a club or a
Or an
sports
extra
team or arts program.
And then in that case, the kid's now at school from 8 a.m. to 5. So they're working a job just going to school.
Don't forget the 18 weeks that they're off school for spring break and summer break. And also, you don't forget about Screw the Parents Wednesday, which I call early release Wednesday, where they get out an hour earlier for no apparent reason. And
yeah. Now, fortunately for both Joe and Colin, they work in a field that does allow them to be A, mobile, and B, take that time. But imagine if one of the workers in the family was a factory worker where they are on a production line. They just can't walk off the production line at 2:30 to go pick up their child from school or early release. Well, they'll ride the bus home. Okay, so they get home at 3:00 and 5 or 6 years old. What are they going to do from 3 till the parent gets home, unsupervised for a couple hours? So I think maybe we are driving parents back to the one worker. And like Colin said, if you're not making 50 or 60,000 as the second job, it's probably better that you stay at home and fulfill, a parental duty and make your kid do their homework and do all this other stuff to create.
Nobody's going to be as concerned or invested as the actual parents. So I think that is not a bad thing. When I grew up, Dad and I were just talking about this, and we were thinking to ourselves, how did we do this with one income? And and the truth, we came to the conclusion was that we actually just did without things that modern families are really used to. And my daughter is very spoiled. She takes a lot of vacations. She has everything she wants, all kinds of clothes. I had the same clothes over and over. I was getting hand-me-down clothes. We didn't take a vacation until I was 15, I think. We had one car for a lot of my life. We had one television in the house. We did without.
I want to take a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Five Stones Podcast. We want to thank our sponsor for that. And we are currently talking about some statistics that Joe found about the amount of money that the average American is now spending for just housing and daycare is almost 2/3 on average. Isn't that what you said?
Well, so we'll just round it up for easy math. So let's say they're spending $2,000 a month on childcare, $2,000 a month on their mortgage. The average monthly income is $6,700. So they are spending $4,000 out of every $6,700 just on childcare and mortgage. So that leaves them transportation costs, gas, insurance, food, education,
living. Yeah.
Well, they got a whole third of it left. Come on, that's plenty.
4/7 of their money.
Yeah.
Does the government take some first?
That's about 56%.
How about we petition to pay our other stuff and then pay the government what's left?
Yeah.
Well, and here's the other thing. So let's say, all right, I can't afford a mortgage payment of $2,000. The average rent cost in the country right now is $1,300. So that takes into account, just a single room flat all the way up to, 3 or 4 bedroom apartment.
That believe it or not, to me sounds very low.
I agree, but that you're baking in a lot of smaller units as well with that. So
yeah, we've been talking. It's getting to be a tougher world. The average family can't afford the average house, so they're going to have to sacrifice somehow, either their lifestyle or not have kids, or get a smaller house, or I
Well,
don't know how this resolves itself. I mean, we know in the long term, inflation can't keep crushing us because people just won't be able to
yeah,
do anything.
we know that Colin has been calling this or predicting this for 2 years. You know, seeing that the average and what was the story you gave? Two people both working at Amazon making $20 an hour.
Yeah, I mean that's about 80 or 90,000 a year. I mean they cannot afford the average house around 300,000 any longer.
Yeah,
Indiana, in central Indiana, is relatively affordable place to live for housing costs.
the
And
average
even
house, the average house in my bore for the month of January was $280,000.
so with little down, our that makes sense because our average loan for the last 12 months has been about 270. So
Yeah,
that's a minimum down payment, 3% down, that's about 10 grand, loan of 270. So they're buying the average house, but that payment is now over $2,000 a month. And you're talking about families that make that 6,000, 7,000 a month, maybe 8,000. That is I think it was Merrill Lynch or one of the finance companies showed the graph of how much uh, percentage of house payments are relative to gross income, and they said that the danger zone used to be 30%. If it went above 30% of average household income, gross income, it was a concern. It is now at 39%, and some states are even higher, far higher. That's the average nationally. So you're talking about some states where it's 50 and 60%, and others where it's more modest, 20, 25, 30.
yeah.
So
Well,
we're well beyond the danger zone where people are house poor, quote unquote.
compounded even further, right now the average car payment is $726 a month. So let's just say on average you've got two cars in a household and maybe they have one that they have paid off. You throw another $720 on top of that, and that's just the payment. That isn't the car insurance or anything else. I mean, been reading and hearing articles and seeing things talking about spending is going back up. Well, yeah, spending is going back up, not because people have money to spend, but because everything costs so freaking much. I mean, everything costs too much. So
Well,
spending is up.
furthermore, Joe, I mean, if that second spouse is working, they need a car. So
Mhm.
while the average car payment may be 700, I would venture to say most houses have two car payments
Yep.
because in order to drive to that job, they need a car. So you're looking at another 1,500 in car payments.
Yeah, so there we go. Let's round it up, and we've done this math before on here. $2,000 for childcare, $2,000 for a mortgage, $2,000 to drive two cars. There's $6,000, and if the median monthly income is $6,640, they have
Yeah,
$640 to live on as a family. It's untenable.
yeah,
Can't do it.
If income number two is not 50, 60,000, you're losing.
Mhm.
yeah.
So you
That's
need
what
to
I'm
do
saying.
some
They're
real
better off
analysis.
probably staying at home if they're only making in that range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've known a family that actually the spouse sought a job at the daycare facility so the kids could go to the daycare at no cost. So she made a little money and the kids went for free and she could be around her own kids. But everybody can't do that. But that was one way I saw that solved.
That would be kind of cool if we could find a way to send people to work and have a daycare at the work.
Well, the
And maybe,
government's figured that out. There at the Indiana Government Center, there's a daycare.
yeah. So see,
Well,
maybe that might be an answer for one of you business owners out there. Maybe that's a good benefit that maybe instead of health insurance or something, you might be able to give, hey, we've got an in-house daycare so you can go check on the children, but for 3 hours you're going to do your office job and then you get a half an hour break. You can go see your kid, have lunch, come back, work 3 more hours, and net that somehow out of job pay or something.
You know, decades ago, I'll say prior to my generation, I guess I'm in Gen X, but My mom's generation used to have joint families, before the rise of nursing home care and things for the elderly. Grandma used to live at home, and the joint family provided that help, home care for the grandkids, so to speak. We've
Well,
gone
and I
away
think
from that, and then I don't think that you can tell American families today to sacrifice and give up their vacations and their other stuff. I don't know that culturally they're ready to accept that type of stuff.
But culturally, I think it's already happening. I mean, we've been looking at this for the last 2 or 3 years minimum, probably closer to the last decade, where we always want to joke about people that are in their 20s and 30s still living at home. This is why people that are in their 20s and 30s are still living at home.
Yeah.
They can afford to feed themselves and probably pay for a car and do some other things on their own, but they can't do all of that and pay for the house.
Yeah.
So they stay at home with mom and dad.
That's the other thing we noticed is that credit card debt is way up. Now that's
Yeah.
an arguable metric. Raymond made a good point. You have a balance, then you pay it off because you're using it to get the points. But I don't think everyone operates in a savvy nature. So the balances just a couple of years ago were like $300 billion. Now it's over $1 trillion in credit card debt. What that tells me is people are maintaining their lifestyle by borrowing money, and that works to a point, but eventually the bill comes.
Well, they're saying right now that the average debt is $6,088 as of Q3 of 2023. So we're beyond that. $6,088 per card holder. So
There's another
it's
200
actually
bucks a
per
month in
card
interest.
held.
Yeah, 200 bucks a month in interest. So add that to the 2,700 for the house and the car, the extra car. Now you're up to $3,000. Your take home pay to be $3,000, you got to be making 55, 60,000,
Yeah.
to take that
And
home.
that's just paying the interest. That's not touching the principal.
Well, we're also reaping the I use rewards in a negative connotation in this sense, but we're reaping the rewards of a society that is instant gratification. Even when I was growing up, we need to wait till Christmas and we'll look into getting all of that. Now it's, oh, I see it, I want it, I buy it. And you get, just like we've talked about before, 3 clicks and
Yeah.
it's sitting on my doorstep the next day.
Thank you, Amazon.
Yeah. But it's not just Amazon now. I mean, it's Walmart, it's Target, it's Lowe's, and it's Raymond getting a phone call. I mean, it's all kinds of things causing all of this. So,
All right. So I'm out.
No, you're there.
You're back. So the question begs, this is, he is gone.
He's gone. He'll come back.
The question begs, how does this get solved? When the answers are going to be all you either got to earn more, sacrifice, or not have kids and have grandma stay
Hey,
home.
he's back.
Ta-da!
So anyhow, we were discussing solutions when you dropped off and came back on.
Solar.
I will say the same thing that I've said for years. There are no solutions without pain. And this country is not yet to a point where they're willing to accept pain to solve the problem. We want to get rid of debt. We want to get rid of everything we're talking about with overspending in the government and everything else. It is going to require pain. It's going to require sacrifice from everybody, every walk of life. And until we're ready to do that, it isn't going to happen.
Spend less or earn more.
Yeah.
Get into real estate and become an easy, quick millionaire, right?
Oh, yeah. That's exactly how it works, right? Right now. Anyhow. Oh, we've got him back yet again.
Son of a. I guess there's a bunch of solar flares down here in the islands that were.
Yeah.
Just there.
AT&T solar flares that strategically only affect the United States. It's amazing.
And only
AT&T.
AT&T.
Apparently. So.
There is, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about some political solutions. I mean, in the real world, that is another solution that is a tougher time. It's a solution that takes time, but really the government is responsible for inflation. I mean, they're printing money and generating it and giving it out, and otherwise there would be no inflation. So politically there's an approach, but I don't know how long that solution
Does
takes.
that include paying $1.2 billion of people's loans that they willingly signed up for and knew what they were getting into when they did it, but now somehow don't
Yeah,
think they
just
should have to
forgive
pay
them.
for it?
Well, it's funny. I read a book the other day. It was an old book, and they were talking about the tremendous sum of $500 million in the budget. And I
Yeah.
was thinking to myself, 500 billion now is like a half of an annual funding.
They just fined Trump that much in New York.
Yeah, 335 million.
Yeah.
So
Well,
the
when I was doing
numbers
the
have gotten
corporate world,
ridiculous.
when I was in the environmental world back in the early 90s, they had a thing called Superfund because it was $8 billion. That was such a big number. They nicknamed it Superfund. And now we've got 3,000 billionaires in the United States. We got people that are worth more than that. And it was such a big number then. It was inconceivable that they could spend $8 billion.
I often hear politicians saying Reagan raised the debt limit 11 times during his presidency, and you hear that. You know what it was at the peak? It was $400 billion was the credit for American debt. 400 billion. Now we're at 35 trillion.
Yeah.
Just a generation later.
Well, this has all been uplifting, gentlemen. I thank you very much for that. And come back next week, and we're going to have the solution for this. So we've got a week to solve this problem. Once again, if you are out there and you want to be on the show with us, we encourage it. If you agree with us, we encourage you to come on. If you disagree with us, we still encourage you to come on.
If you have an experience with this if you're living this scenario, we would love to hear your perspective.
Yes. Either way, put a comment in there. Say something about you want to be a guest, you want to come on, anything like that. And we'll have our producer reach out to you and we'll schedule this and we can do it just like this. So you don't even have to go anywhere. You can still sit in the comfort of your home and you can have this discussion with us or against us. We don't care either way. All right. So once again, gentlemen, I thank you and look forward to seeing you guys again next week. Don't forget the subscribe button and the bell notification. And peace. I'm out. I'm going to the ocean.
Harumph.
Oh, I got balloons.